Namaskarams to all our acharyas and namaskarams to all of you. I am very grateful to have an opportunity to share a few thoughts about Tirumurugatruppadai, a very beautiful Tamil work of poetry. Tirumurugatruppadai belongs to the Sangam Age, which according to historians is the age around 2000 years ago. The poetry of the Sangam Age is divided into three large categories. They are called the Patthupaattu, Togai and Keezhkanakku. Patthupaattu consists of 10 long poems. Togai consists of 8 books, but these are not by single authors. Each book is an anthology, a collection of shorter poems by many different poets. There are many famous books in Togai like Agananuru, Purananuru, Natrinai, Kurundogai, etc. The third category, Keezhkanakku, has 18 books which are didactic in nature. In other words, they are moral instruction books. The most famous amongst these 18 books is the Tirukkural. Now coming to Tirumurugatruppadai, it is the very first book amongst the 10 songs which make up, or 10 books which make up the Patthupaattu. So we could also say that it is the very first amongst the entire 36 books which make up Sangam poetry. So that would give us an sense of what an important work this is. Now these Sangam works were all printed in the last couple of centuries by Tamil Tata Shri Uve Swaminatha Iyer, who worked very hard to collect many different manuscripts. He examined all of them, cross-checked and corrected and curated the best and most authentic version and printed all these Sangam works, for which the Tamil world is greatly indebted to him. In his book of Tirumurugatruppadai, he states that amongst all Sangam works, this is one work which has never gone out of use. People have continued to chant it across the ages. There is an ancient commentary for Tirumurugatruppadai written by a scholar called Nakkeerar, and this commentary has also been printed by Shri Uve Swaminatha Iyer. We must realize that all these Sangam works, including the commentaries, are in archaic Tamil, which are very difficult for us to understand generally. So we do need the help of someone who can explain these in modern or contemporary language to us. And the first person to do that in a very effective manner is Shri Kiva Jagannathan, who is a student or a disciple of Tamil Tata Uve Swaminatha Iyer. He has written a beautiful book called Vazhikatti, which is the Tirumurugatruppadai explained in very simple language and very detailed and evocative prose. It's interesting to see that he has named his book Vazhikatti. Let's see why. Now there is a genre of writing, as we know, called travel writing, where people who visit a country or a place write about what they saw there, how their experiences were, etc. So in Tamil there is a very similar genre called Atruppadai. It is similar because that too refers to someone describing his travel to some country or some place. But it is also different because the purpose of this description is not just to share his experiences, but to encourage other people to also go there and meet some benevolent king or leader, some great man, a rich man, who would be a good patron to the artists who visit him. So typically it is written as if narrated by a dancer or a singer or a bard. So these are people who are called as Panars, Viralis or Koothars, etc. These are singers and dancers, and when they return from a place and they have come back richly rewarded, they want to share the joy and the experience with other similar artists and tell them, you could go there and meet this king. He is very fond of the arts, he is very benevolent, he is very generous, so you too can come back richly rewarded. So this is the typical tone of the many Aatrupadai books found in Sangam poetry. So Tirumurugatruppadai is similarly something in which the poet, the author, a great saint poet called Nakkeerar, tells us about a benevolent Lord. The Lord is not just a king or a rich man, he is God, Murugan himself. And he tells us, if you go to him and share your difficulties with him, you will definitely be rewarded with benefits. He will grant you all your wishes. So this is something which tells us to go to Tirumurugan, and that's why it is Tirumurugatruppadai. And since this is the language which a guide would use, saying you go to this country, you can see all this. That is why the word Valigati, which is the Tamil word for a guide, is the name of the book. In fact, the Sanskrit word for a guru, Deshika, also means something very similar. Someone who shows the direction of where to go. This book, Tirumurugatruppadai, is also famous that it is one of the few books said to have mantra shakti. There are some stotras in Sanskrit like the Subramanya Bhujangam, Saundarya Lahari, etc., which are reputed to have a lot of mantra shakti. Similarly, in Tamil, we have some works like Thirungnana Sambandhar's Kolaru Padikam, Avvayar's Vinayaka Ragaval, and this Tirumurugatruppadai. So what do we mean when we say a particular work has mantra shakti? It means that the very sound of those works, the very words are powerful and can give us what we want, and it is not necessary for us to even know the meaning. It is not even necessary for us to have our mind focused on the prayer. So Tirumurugatruppadai is known to have the power to grant wishes as well as destroy ailments, both physical and mental, and which is why it has been revered and adored by people through the ages. The story of how and when it was composed will make us understand why this work is linked to destruction of difficulties and evil. So the story of Nakkeerar is narrated in two important books. The first is the Thiruvilayadal Puranam, which tells us the stories or the Leelas of Shiva in Madurai. The second book is the Tiruparankundram Sthala Puranam. In the first book, we hear about Nakkeerar being a very important poet in the Pandya's court, and he once incurs the wrath of the Lord because he is disrespectful to Lord Shiva and Devi. And to atone for this sin, he has to make a yatra, travel to Kailasagiri. So he sets out of Madurai and he reaches Tiruparankundram. So what happens in Tiruparankundram is narrated in the Tiruparankundram Sthala Puranam, which says that Nakkeerar was performing his usual daily Shiva Puja, but at that time his mind was distracted by some sight, and using that as an excuse, quickly he was captured by an ogress, a demoness called Karkimuki, who imprisoned him inside a cave in a mountain. Now inside the cave there were a lot of other men, and they all started wailing when they saw Nakkeerar. So he asked them, "Why are you crying?" So they told him, "This demoness has an intention of eating 1,000 people at a time, and we are 999 already. Now that you have come as the 1,000th person, it means the end for all of us. And that's why we are crying." So Nakkeerar was very saddened to hear this. So he said, "Not only am I imprisoned, but I've also come as representing the death of all these people." And he decided to pray to Murugan to release them all from this evil demoness. So he composed this Tirumurugatruppadai and prayed to Murugan, and Murugan was so pleased with this work, so happy, and this work is considered very dear to him, that he sent his Shakti Ayudham, his veil, to demolish the mountain and free all these people. The Shakti Ayudham also killed the demoness Karkimuki and saved them. These incidents have been recorded by the saint Arunagirinathar in some of his works. In his work called Vedichi Kavalan Vaguppu, he says, Ediril Pulavarku Udavu Ivuli Mukhiyai Poruda Ravuttan. He says Murugan is the great hero who destroyed this Ivuli Mukhi, which is another name for Kalki Mukhi, for protecting this Ediril Pulavan, this matchless poet called Nakkeerar. And another famous description of this event is in the Veil Vagup, where he says, this veil, Shakti Ayudham of my lord of Tirutani, is the one which demolished the big mountain to save the poet who belongs to the Sangam, Tamil Sangam of Madurai. Pazhutha mudu Tamil பலகை இருக்குமொரு கவிப்புலவன் இசைக்குருகி வரை குகையை இடித்து வழி காணும் திருத்தணியில் உதித்தருளும் ஒருத்தன் மலை விருத்தன் எனதுளத்திலுரை கருத்தன் மயில் நடத்து குகன் வேலே. So apart from protecting Nakkeerar from this evil, Murugan also gave him another very helpful boon. He said, you need not go all the way to Kailasam, which will take so long. Instead, you can just go to Kalahasti, which is known as Dakshina Kailasam, and there itself your curse will be lifted and you can come back to your place in Madurai. The book Tirumurugatruppadai, we have just seen the story of how it was born. It consists of around 320 lines. It is one long poem but divided into 6 parts. It begins with the word Ulagam Uvappa, or phrase Ulagam Uvappa, which means the whole world is delighted. So this word Ulagam is considered a very auspicious word, a Mangala Shabdam to begin works with in ancient Tamil literature. We find many other works which begin with the same word or even similar words. So for example, we all would know the starting verse of Periya Puranam of Shankar, which starts with Ulagelam Unarndodarku Ariyavan. Similarly, Kambar begins his Ramayanam with Ulagam Yavayum Tam Ulavakalum, etc. So, synonyms of Ulagam, the world, are also found in some works. This shows the universal outlook of our great Kavis, poets. They have the welfare of the whole world in their minds. They don't just think of narrow groups, but the entire world and its people are there in their consciousness. Interestingly, Arunagirinathar says in one of his Tiruppugal songs that it is Murugan who gave Nakkeerar the required knowledge of grammar, etc., to compose this work, and also gave him the spurti, the motivation with these starting words to compose his poem. In his Tiruppugal starting with Kadima Malar Kul, he says, வளவாய்மை சொற்பிரபந்தமுள கீரனுக்கு உகந்து மலர்வாய் இலக்கணங்கள் இயல்போதி அடிமோனை சொற்கு இணங்க உலகாம் உவப்ப என்று உன் அருளால் அளிக்கு கந்த பெரியோனே. O Muruga, you were so happy to give Nakkeerar all the required grammar or ilakkanam knowledge and give him the starting words of this Tirumurugatruppadai. So now that we have seen the context of this work and some broad details about it, let us go and see what is inside this book. This book, as we know, is made up of 6 parts, and these 6 parts or sections are titled Tiruparankundram, Siralaivai, Tiru Avinankudi, Tiru Veragam, Kundrudoradal and Palamudircholai. The moment you hear this, you will immediately know that these are nothing but the famous Arupadai Vedas of Murugan. So Nakkeerar was the first person to mention these 6 very important kshetras of Murugan, which we now know as Arupadai Veedu. In fact, the word Aru Padai Veedu, if you break them that way, it means the 6 military camps of Murugan. But in reality, these 6 places, amongst these 6 places, only Tiruchendur is a military camp where Murugan took base for fighting with Surapadman, his adversary, the Asura. In all other places, there is no fight involved. So, there are many scholars who feel that what we should be calling these 6 kshetras is not Arupadai Veedu, but it should be Aatrupadai Veedugal or Aatrupadai Talangal, because these are the kshetras or Vedas which were told to us by this Aatrupadai, by this book Tirumurugatruppadai. So the first section starts with a short Rupa Varnana, a description of the form of Murugan of about 6-7 lines. He starts by saying that the form of Murugan resembles that of the sun at the time of sunrise. He has a beautiful red complexion like the sun of the early morning. And just like the sun arises from the blue sea, it's left unstated, but we could infer that this resembles Murugan coming on a blue peacock. Then he says, Murugan's feet are those which support and protect all those who come to him, while his hands are strong as thunder and they can destroy enemies. He appears as Ulagam Uvappa Valan Ervu Tiritaru Palar Puhal Nyayiru Kadal Kandang. Then his feet and then his hands are Urunar Tangiya Madan Udai Nontal Serunar Teitha Sellural Tadakkai. Then he is described as the husband of goddess Deivanai, who is described as Maruvil Karpin Valnudal Kanavan. She is Maruvil Karpin Valnudal, the very chaste, beautiful lady who has a shining forehead, Valnudal. So that is an indication or a symbol of purity and wisdom. So the rest of the verses in the Tirupparangundram description talk about the mountains where the Apsaras come and dance. They adorn themselves with the flowers available there in the mountains, and then they dance and sing while they sing the praises of Murugan. So there is a detailed description of the form of the Apsaras, how they have decorated themselves from tip to toe, and how they sing the praises of Murugan, and even his flag, the flag which has the seval, the rooster. Koli ongiya venradu viral kodi vaழிய பெரிது என்று ஏத்தி பலருடன் சீர்த்திகள் சிலம்பகம் சிலம்பப் பாடி. The whole mountains are reverberating with the sound of their singing. So these Sur Aramagalir means these Apsaras, they dance, and in these mountains there are some rare flowers like the Kandal, the gloriosa lily or flame lily, which Murugan likes to wear on his head. Then the poet goes on to describe the scene in a battlefield where there is a Pei Magal, a ghost or a demoness, who walks around there enjoying the feast of dead bodies which are lying in the battlefield, and she too dances a dance called Tunangai and sings the praise of Murugan, because it is because of him that she has got all this food to eat. So the poet briefly describes the Sura Samharam, how he became a mango tree and Murugan destroyed him, and then goes on to tell us, the listener, saying, if you wish to go and meet this Murugan, have a darshan of him, then the first place, one place that you could go is that place which is to the west of Madurai. Then he goes on to describe Madurai in very grand terms, and he says this place which is to the west of Madurai, Madamali Maruhin Kudal Kudavayin. It is to the Kudagu, the western direction of Kudal, which is another name of Madurai. And this Madurai, which has streets which have tall buildings, Madamali Maruhin Kudal. So he says if you go there you can find a hill, and there you will find Murugan residing in that hill which has so many lotus and lily flowers. Amsirai Vandin Arikanam Olikum Kundru Amarndu Uraidalum Uriyan. He likes to reside that place which is buzzing with the honey bees because of these lotus and lilies there. Then he says Ada Andru. Not only that, don't think that this is the only place you can find this Lord. Then he goes to the next section. Every section ends with, the first few sections end with Ada Andru. That means not just that. Don't think that these are the only few places Murugan resides. So the second section starts with description of Tiruchiralaivai, which we know as Tiruchendur now. Here the poet describes Murugan coming on a very swift elephant to protect his devotees, and he says that Murugan comes here with 6 faces, and he goes on to describe what each of these 6 faces do. Quite similar to the famous Tiruppugal we might have heard, Eru Mayil Eri Vilayadu Muham Ondre, Isarodu Jnanam Mozhi Pesu Muham Ondre, etc. Here Nakkeerar tells us what the 6 faces do, and also what his 12 hands or arms do. And there is a direct correspondence. The first 2 arms he describes are those which are connected to the action of the first face. And similarly, the second face, whatever it does, the next pair of hands have a similar mudra or weapons, etc. So let's see what they are. Very interesting and beautiful description of Murugan's role. We understand how he is revered, in what all areas we see his grace. The first phase, he says, removes the darkness of this world by blessing the sun and also blessing the rishis who go along with the sun. They are called the Valakilyas, and they, with their tapas and their shakti, they take on the fierce aspects of the sun and make the sun's energy available to the earth in the right proportion. And to them, Murugan provides required support and blessing so that they don't get exhausted. The first phase is Maayirul Nyalam Maruvindri Vilanga Pal Kadir Virindandru Orumuham. We should understand that in old Tamil, the word Andru doesn't mean no. It could also mean a filler word. So Pal Kadir Virindandru Orumugam. And what do those hands do? Vinselal Marabin Ayyarku Endiyadu Oru Kai. His first hand provides abhayam to the rishis who go in the sky along with the sun. Vinselal Marabin Ayyar. And the corresponding other hand is placed on his waist. Ukkam Sertiyadu Oru Kai. Now coming to the second phase. The second phase is something which does Bhakta Rakshana. He gives boons to devotees who come to him with lot of love. Arvalar Etta Amarndu Inidoluhi Kadalin Uvandu Varam Kodutandre Orumuham. And one phase receives all his devotees who come to him with love. Arvalar means people who are filled with love. And he listens to them, enjoys what they say, and he's delighted to give them whatever boons they want. Then those 2 hands corresponding to his face, which gives devotees whatever they want. The first hand holds an ankusham. When one hand holds an ankusham, because to come to his devotees, he comes on his peacock or on his elephant, and he needs to regulate the speed to make them come faster. So he needs an ankusham. And the other hand, the first hand actually, is placed on his thigh. That is the pose that he would sit in when he is seated on his peacock or elephant. So, Nalamperu Kalingattu Kurangin Misai Asai Iyadu Orukai, Ankusham Kadava Orukai. Kurangu means the thigh. The third phase, again a very beautiful description of how Murugan protects the Vedas and Yagnas. These lines have been quoted by Kanchi Mahaperiyava to explain to us that Murugan is the Yagnya Rakshaka. ஒரு முகம் மந்திர விதியின் மரபுளி வழா அந்தணர் வேள்வி ஓர்க்குமே. One face protects the velvi, the yagnas of Andanas, the Vaidikas, who perform it marabuli vada, without swerving from the tradition or the correct method of doing it. Mandira Vidiyin Marab, they have the rules which are followed according to the scriptures, and they don't swerve from that. They do these yagnas very attentively, correctly, and he protects them. And to protect this, to ensure that evil forces do not come and hinder their activities, he has his Velayudham and a shield in his two hands, a spear and a shield. Irukai ayyiru vattamodu ehku valam tirip. Vattam means the shield which is round in shape. Oru Mugham, the fourth, now we go on to the fourth phase, which is also a very important tattvam. It says that this fourth phase is the phase of Murugan providing Jnana Upadesham to the suitable devotees, all his devotees who seek moksha. Oru Mugam enjiya porulgalai ஏமுற நாடி திங்கள் போல திசை விளக்குமே. எஞ்சிய பொருள்கள் means the truth which is beyond all other learning or book knowledge, and he takes that and explains it to his devotees, and that face is therefore like a moon, very cool. Tingal pola disai vilakkume. So this connection to the moon is very interesting, because the moon is always associated with tapa shanti, reduction of heat and suffering, and this is what the effect of jnanam would be on the recipients. The moment they attain jnana, all their worldly sufferings go away. This is why even Muthuswami Dikshitar in his Kriti on Murugan, Sri Subramanyaya Namaste, he says, Tapatraya Harana Nipuna Tattvopadesha Kartre. He can do this Tattvopadesham which can remove all the Tapatrayam, the three kinds of suffering we face in this world. And these two hands corresponding to the face doing Jnanopadesham, both the hands are in Chin Mudra, the mudra which indicates teaching. The first hand is facing upward, the other hand which also has a Chin Mudra is turned downwards. So what would happen is, what we would see is the hand is placed, looks like it is placed on his garland. The three fingers are prominently seen on the garland which he is wearing on his chest. Oru kai marbodu vilanga, oru kai taarodu poliya. So Murugan, with both his hands in Chin Mudra, both are held close to his chest. This beautiful pose we can imagine now, but actually we don't see any representations of Murugan in sculpture or painting with this pose, but we do see Buddha in this kind of pose, holding both his hands in Chin Mudra. So we could imagine that this is how Murugan also would be seated in when he is doing Tattvopadesha. The fifth phase of Murugan is for destroying the evil Asuras, the Sura Padmadi Asuras. Oru Mugam serunar தேய்த்து செல் சமம் முறுக்கி கருவுக்குள் நெஞ்சமுடு களம் வேட்டன்றே. The battle is described as a kalavelvi, a yagna which is done on the battlefield, and he destroys the enemies, serunar தேய்த்து, and he takes on a sentiment of anger to be able to do this. That is not his nature, but he does take up anger for that sake. Karuvukol nenjamodu. And this Kalavelvi, all the lives which are taken in battle are considered as sacrifice to Rana Bhairavi, goddess Kali. And the two hands which are corresponding to this face, one of them is raised high up in a pose which invites or challenges the enemies to come closer. And as he does that, as he raises his hands and swirls them there, his bracelets are sliding down because his hand is held up. Oru kai keel veer todiyodu. Keelvil Todi is the sliding bracelets. Me misai kotpa. Oru kai paadin padumani iratta. The corresponding hand is ringing a bell, which is also a sign of battle, done in battle. We might have noticed that Durga Devi also holds a bell in one of her many hands. Now we come to the sixth phase. The last phase is providing rain to the entire world, and also through rain it provides prosperity and worldly enjoyment to the world. So in this phase he is shown as seated very happily with Valli, who is his other consort, and while he is happily smiling at Valli and providing rain with one hand, the other hand he provides the wedding garlands to celestial women, all the Devas three, so that they can get married. So providing prosperity and marital bliss, Iha para Saukhyam, we say, as being given by Murugan, this is the Saukhyam of this world. He provides both Artha and Kama. So as we can see from across all his faces, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, all the Purusharthas are provided by Murugan through his various activities. ஒரு முகம் குறவர் மடமகள் கொடிபோல் நுசுப்பின் மடவரல் வள்ளியோடு நகை அமர்ந்தன்றே. He is smiling with Valli. And those two hands, ஒரு கை நீல் நிற விசும்பின் மலி துளி பொழிய. From the sky he provides lots of rain. ஒரு கை வான் அறமகளிர்க்கு வதுவை சூட்ட. So doing all this, he resides in Tiruchir Alaivai, and this Alaivai is a very special kshetra. Even amongst the six, it has a very unique and important status even today, and it is world famous. So he says, Ulagam pugalந்த ஓங்குயர் விழுச்சீர் அலைவாய் சேரலும் நிலையிய பண்பே. So he has this nature, panbu, of residing in Alaivai, which is praised by the entire world. Ulagam pugalந்த ஓங்கு உயர் விழுச்சீர். So many adjectives indicating its supreme position. Now we come to the third kshetra, which is Avinankudi. Avinankudi is what we call Palani today. More specifically, it refers to the temple which is at the foothill of Palani. And here he describes three groups of people coming to pray to Murugan. The first group is the Rishis. The second is the Gandharvas, is the group of Gandharvas who come singing his praises with the musical instruments. The Gandharvas and Gandharvis, they come as couples to sing his praise. The third group indicates all the Devas, the gods led by very great gods like Shiva and Vishnu. Shri Kiva Jagannathan says that the first two groups are people who are very dear to Murugan. He is very fond of the Rishis and he loves music. And therefore, the Devas are first asking the Rishis to go in, then they ask the musicians to go in, so that when they go to him, Murugan is in a very happy state of mind and he would easily grant whatever prayers they have. So the description of the Rishis is very beautiful. They are people who are so austere, they eat only once in many days, and therefore you can count the bones on their chest. And they have absolutely no hatred or enmity in their hearts. And their knowledge is something which is beyond what normal learned people would have, erudite people also. And yet they themselves are also the highest amongst the erudite people. So I'll read out the description of the Rishis. Oon kedu marbin enbu எழுந்து இயங்கும் யாக்கையர். There is no flesh on their chest, only the bones can be seen. நன் பகல் பலவும் கழிந்த உண்டியர். இகலோடு செற்றம் நீங்கிய மனத்தினர். No dvesham in their hearts. Similar to what Bhagavad Gita says, no? Adveshta sarva bhutanam. That is the kind of very compassionate state they are in. Yavadum katror ariya arivinar. கற்றோர்க்கு தாம் வரம்பாகிய தலைமையர் காமமோடு கடும் சினம் கடிந்த காட்சியர். Finally he says they have no kamakrodhas. Now while describing the Gandharvas who come as couples to sing the praises of Murugan, he gives us a very beautiful description of how they tune their musical instruments, the strings. They tune it keeping it close to their ears so that they are able to hear it very accurately. I mean, it's a pen picture which we can really see as very exact. We would have seen such scenes in concert halls, etc. Sevi nerbu vaitha seivuru tivavin nalliyal navinra. Then he says these people are nayanudai nenjin menmoli mevalar. Mevalar is Gandharvas. They have very soft hearts. Nayanudai nenj, loving hearts, and they speak very gently, very softly. Menmoli. So these two remind me immediately of something again which Kanji Periva has said about Matangi, Ambal in her form as Matangi or Shyamala Devi. She plays the veena, and her description is found in one of the stotras of Kalidasa, Shyamala Navaratna Malika, where he says, Sarigama padhani ratam tam veena sankranta kanta hastanta. She's playing the 7 notes, pulling the veena with strings with her nakhas, her nails, and she is very tranquil, and her heart is very soft at that point. And Preva says that this is because of the music. This is the effect that true pure music can have on people. Shantam mridula swantam kuchabharatantam namami shivakantam. So the shantam mridula swantam, these are all the effects of music, and we find that exactly the same thing is said about the Gandharvas here. So menmoli mevalar in narambu ulara. So they are strumming their soft sweet strings. Then all the devas come, and in this manner he resides in Thiruvavinnankudi, praised by all these people, along with Deivanai. Devasena is described here as Tavil Kolhai Madandayodu Sinnal Avinankudi Asaidalum Uriyan. Now we move on to the 4th Kshetra, which is Tiruveragam, also known as Swami Malai. It's a very short section, the shortest of the 6 sections, and in this Nakkeerar tells us about the group of priests or Vaidikas who come and worship Murugan here, and these are his devotees who are Shat Karma Niratas. Thiruvalluvar calls them as Arutolilor. They follow the strict injunctions of the Vedas or the Smritis that they should carry out 6 activities in their lives, which are Adhyayanam, Adhyapanam, learning the Vedas and teaching the Vedas, Yajanam, Yajanam, doing the Yagnas and performing it for other people, then Pratigraham and Danam, accepting and giving gifts. So these are the 6 activities allowed for Vaidikas, and they follow that, and they consider not any other material thing as their wealth, but they consider their 3 Agnis which they worship every day through the Vedic rites as their selvam, wealth. And they are Irupirappalars, Dvijas, the twice born. They come to pray to this Murugan of Tiruveragam with their hands on their heads, and they praise him, and they chant his 6-lettered mantra, the Shadakshara. And when they chant it, they also bring fragrant flowers, and they hold it in their hands. They offer him mantra pushpa. After chanting the mantras with the flowers in their hands, they offer it to him, and he accepts it very, very happily and is delighted by it. Irumundru eidhiya iyalbinin vazha mutti selvathu irupirappalar. The Dvijas who have their 3 fires as their wealth, and they follow the Irumundru, the Shat Karmas. Uchi Kupiya Kayinar, தற்புகழ்ந்து ஆறெழுத்து அடக்கிய அருமறை கேள்வி நாவியல் மருங்கின் நவிலப்பாடி. Now this phrase நாவியல் மருங்கின் நவிலப்பாடி means they chant this mantra very close to their tongues. This is what we call as upamshu japam, the japa which is done without the sound being heard by anyone. And virayuru narumalar endi, they bring very sweet smelling flowers. பெரிது உவந்து ஏரகத்து உரைதலும் உரியன். So he resides in Tiruveragam, enjoying all this very much. And it's very beautiful to see that exactly these things, this idea has been echoed by Arunagirinathar in his work which is on Tiruveragam Murugan, which is the Thiru Ezhukootrikkai, where he says in Swami Malai, which is to the north of Kaveri, he is worshipped by all these great Vaidikas. Kaveri Vadakarai Meviya Gurugiri Irunda Areluthu Andanar Adiyinai Potra Eragattiraivan Ena Irundanaye. Areluthu Andanar. He even mentions that they chant this Shadakshara mantra. Now, the fifth Kshetra, Kundrudoradal, is not actually a single place. It refers to all the hills where Murugan has taken residence. Kundrudorum Adum Kumaran, he is said to be. Adum we usually interpret it as sporting, one who sports or enjoys residing happily in all mountains. But Nakkeerar has actually used the word Adum in a literal sense. He shows Murugan dancing with the hill people in all these mountains. So the Kundrudoradal section starts by describing the tribes who live on the hills. They enjoy their lives. Unlike the previous descriptions of rishis and vaidikas who would live a very austere life, these people come to their prayer after enjoying a feast with all their relatives, and they even drink the fermented alcohol which they create in the mountains. Nakkeerar also describes the kind of puja done by the Pujari, the Velan, how he worships Murugan in those hills, and these people gather and they sing and dance in praise of Murugan. And seeing their pure and simple hearts and seeing their devotion, Murugan actually comes down with a group of apsaras, and they all form a ring and dance along with these people. And that is described very beautifully in this section. And Murugan is described as Seiyan Sivanda Adayan. He is red complexioned and he is wearing red clothes too. Then Sevvarai Seyalai Tan Talir Tuyalvarum Kadinan. He wears the tender leaves of the Ashoka tree. If you have seen the Ashoka tree, you will know that those tender leaves are golden colored and they are like tassels, very beautiful leaves the tree has when they are young. So he wears them in his ears as an ornament, and he not only dances but plays many instruments. Kulalan, Kottan, Kurum Palliyattan. He plays the flute, Kulalan. He plays the kod, which is the horn. He blows the horn. Then many small instruments like this, Kurum Palliyattan. Then he is also described as wearing a dress, a garment, which is inscribed with small dots, like what we would call as a butta sari today. Kurumpori Konda Narum Tan Sayal Marungil Kattiya Nilannerbu Tugilinan. This dress is also very fragrant and soft. Narum Tan Sayal. And he is wearing it in his waist. Marungil Kattiya Nilannerbu Tugilinan. To indicate his high status, elevated status as a king of the world, his garment is trailing on the floor. So with all this, he leads the group of apsaras and dances in the hills. Kundrudor Adalum Nindradan Panbe. So after this, we have the last section of the book, Paramudir Chole. Before talking about the kshetram called Paramudir Chole, Nakkeerar gives us the actual Tirumurugatruppadai section. He tells the devotee, now these are all the places where he resides, but don't think that it is only in these temples that you can see him, or only in those kshetras you have to go all the way and see him. You can actually see him in many places, of any place of natural beauty and any place where people congregate, public spaces. So he gives a small list. He says, Kaadum Kavum Kavin Peru Turuttiyum Yarum Kulanum Veru Palvaippum. So in forests, groves, beautiful turuttis, which is small islands in rivers. Then in rivers, in kulams, which is ponds, and many such places. Then Chadukkamum Sandiyum Pudupung Kadambum Mandramum Podiyilum Kandudai Nilayinum. In all the places where many roads meet, or some roads meet, Chadukkam and Sandi. Pudupung Kadambu, any Kadamba tree which is freshly filled with flowers, newly blossomed flowers. Mandram, Podiyil, all these are sabhas or public places where people congregate. In all these places, you can feel his presence. You can see his presence in the small hill temples or in small village temples where the priestess, a gypsy woman, Kuramagal, offers puja in her own way. Sometimes she even might give a animal as a sacrifice to him. So all these different places where he has his presence. So you can approach him in any of these places, and then he tells him, after going there, you bow to him and sing his praises, extol his glories. And Nakkeerar gives us a list of about 25 or 30 lines of how to praise Murugan. He gives us a beautiful Namavali. So it starts with saying, O Muruga, you're the one who was born in that Saravana Poigai, the Neela Pine Chunai. It's a small chunai or a pond which is blue in color because of all the darbhas there. And you were brought there as sparks by Agni Bhagavan, who is one of the 5 elements. And you were raised by the 6 Kritika women. Nedum Perum Simayat Neela Painchunai Aivarul Oruvan Angai Erpa Aruvar Payanda Aramar Selva. Then he says, you are the son of Shiva, who is Dakshinamurti, sitting under the banyan tree. You are the son of Parvati, and in all her forms you are her son. She can be Parvati, a Malaimagal, or she can be Kottravai, Durga, or she can be called Parayol, Adi Parasakthi. In all these forms you are her son. All Kelu Kadavul Pudalva, Malvarai, Malaimagal Mahane, Matror Kutre, Vetri Velpor Kottravai Siruva, Idayani Sirapil Parayol Kuravi. Then you are the commander-in-chief of the Devas. You are the greatest of Pulavans, poets, scholars. Vanor Vanangu vil Thanai Talaiva, Malai Marba, Noolari Pulava, Seruvil Oruva, Poruviral Malla, Andanar Verukkai Arindor Sonmalai. You are the wealth. Verukkai means selvam of all the Andanars, of all the Vaidikas. Arindor Son Malai, Mangayar Kanava, Maindar Yere, Vel Kelu Tadakkai, Salperum Selva, Kundram Kundra Kotrat. You're the one who destroyed Kraunchagiri. Vin Poru Neduvare Kurinji Kirava. You are the master. Kiravan means lord or master. It does not mean an old man in ancient Tamil. So all these mountains which rise up to the skies, you are the Lord of Kurinji. Kurinji is one of the 5 large divisions of land in Tamil Nadu. It refers to all mountainous regions. Vinporu Neduvarai Kurinji Kirava, Palar Puhar Nanmori Pulavar Yere, Arumperan Marabin, Perumpeyer Muruga. You have the name Murugan, which has so much fame and glory. So in this manner he tells this devotee, in such phrases you praise him, and after praising you tell him that, O Lord, I have just praised you to the extent of that I can, what my intellect allows. But I know that your glory is not something which can be measured by my words. So please accept this and bless me. And when you do this, the attendants of Murugan will see you and they'll go and recommend to Murugan, saying, see this man, poor man, he has come searching for you and he's singing your praises. Please show him your kindness. And immediately Murugan would come. He won't show you his awe-inspiring Vishwarupam, which is very tall and spanning the worlds. Instead, he would take a very beautiful, young, youthful form and come and meet you. He'll say very sweet words to you, and he will also grant a prize. He'll give you a prize or a gift which is impossible to get anywhere else. Peralarum parisil. So, by this, Nakkeerar would obviously mean the moksham, which is the highest gift only God can give us. All other things are lesser to that, which we can get elsewhere or even from God himself. But only Murugan can give us this highest blessing called moksha. So he would give you all this. And this Murugan is not only residing in all the places I said above, but you will find him in Paramudir Sole also. So now Nakkeerar goes on the last few lines of the work. He describes the Nupura Ganga or Silambaru, which is the river or a stream which we find in Paramudir Chole. This Nupura Ganga flows down from the mountain. It's also sacred to the Vishnu temple there, Sundararaja Perumal temple or Kallazhar Kovil. So in this Nupura Ganga, when it comes down the mountain, during the rains it can have a lot of water. So he describes the noise made by this waterfall, and because of the spray and the noise, all the animals near in that forest are shivering and they are scared hearing this noise. All these are described in great detail. He even describes wild animals, and he says this Murugan is the lord of Paramudir Chole, where this waterfall descends with the noise called Irum. This Irum is an onomatopoeic word. It just says how the descent of the water sounds. Irum mena iridarum aruvi Paramudir Solai malai kiravone. This is how the work ends. So after this overview of the 6 sections of Tirumurugatruppadai, a few more things to observe before we conclude. We would have noticed that there is a lot of Edugai and Monai in Tirumurugatruppadai. Edugai means rhyme and Monai is alliteration. So in several places, the consecutive lines begin with rhyming words. For example, Setram Ningiya Manathinar Yavadum Kattror Ariya Arivinar. Kattrorku Tam Varambagiya Talaimayar. So here Setram and Kattror are rhyming. Tam Varambu and Talaimayar. These start with the same consonant, so they have alliteration. So these things add beauty to the very sound of the poetry and make it a pleasure to just listen to it. There are very interesting contrasts which Nakkeerar brings out in his work. As we have already seen, first he describes the very beautiful apsaras who are decorated with beautiful flowers, ornaments, garments, etc. Immediately he describes a Pei Mahal, the ghost who has a very terrible appearance, and both these people are devotees of Murugan. So the contrast is very interesting to observe. Similarly, first he describes these very austere rishis and then these very saintly Vedic scholars. All of them worship Murugan. They undergo fasts and different types of penance and worship him. And immediately after this, in Kunrudoradal, we see how hunters worship him very differently. Their lifestyle, their approach is all very different. So these contrasts help us to realize that differences don't matter in front of the Lord. Differences based on gender, social classes, learning, age, intellect, etc. disappear when one is devoted to the Lord. We also find that the approach of Nakkeerar is like that of so many other saints who say, why go to mortals and sing their praises when you can approach God who is willing to give us everything? Hina manavashrayam tyajami, said Muthuswami Dikshitar. So Nakkeerar too has taken this stand saying, don't go, there is no need to go to kings. You can approach Lord Murugan and he is willing to give you everything. So Tirumurugatruppadai with all its beauty is compared to something which is made of milk. Any food which is made of milk is not only very delicious to have but is also very nourishing. Similarly, works like the Tirumurugatruppadai are very enjoyable. They give a lot of satisfaction because of their poetic intricacies, and they also nourish the soul and give us the benefits of reading a stotra which is very sacred. One delightful feature in the Tirumurugatruppadai is the attention to details and the descriptions, the accurate descriptions given for many things. For example, he describes the vetchipu, the ixora, as senkal vetchi, the flower which has a red stem. Because ixora is one of the few flowers where the stem is made up of the same color as the flower itself. Urulpu, Marat Urulpu, to describe the Kadamba flower which Murugan is wearing as his garland. It's his favorite flower, and as we know, the Kadamba flowers are spherical. They look like tennis balls. So therefore he describes them as Marat Urulpun Tantar Puralum Marbinan. That Urulpu gives us a very quick description of how the flowers appear. Then when he wants to describe the owl which is accompanying the Pei Mahal, the ghost, he says Kadal Kan Kugai, the Kugai or owl which has eyes which seem to be dropping out, Kadal Kan. Then he describes the lotus as Multal Tamarai, the lotus which has a stalk which is very rough, almost like it has small thorns on it. Multal Tamarai. We all would have noticed it. Then when he wants to describe the bear as one of the wild animals in Paramudir Sole, he says Kudavadi Uliyam. Uliyam is Karadi or bear, and it has a bent foot. It's something you would have definitely noticed if you have seen any picture of a bear standing on its four legs or standing on two. One of the front legs would be bent. So that's again a very accurate observation. So these things are found plentifully, very delightfully in this work. Lots of trees and flowers are mentioned here. The Kadamba tree, the Ashoka tree, the Maruda Maram, the Arjuna tree, then the Vila Maram, the wood apple tree. So many flowers like the Kadamba, Seche, the Ixora, Kandal, which is the flame lily, Tamare, Nedal, which are lotus and lily, then the Ashoka flower, then Kanaviram, which is another word for Arali. This seems to be derived from the Sanskrit word for Arali, which is Karaviram. Then another flower called Kudalam, which some scholars say is nothing but what we call as Shangupu now. So all this shows a very close association and connection with nature. We already saw that Arunagirinathar has praised Nakkeerar in many places in his works. Apart from him, many other saintly devotees of Murugan have extolled the greatness of Nakkeerar and his work and how dear it is to Murugan. For example, Chidambaram Swamigal, who has written a work called Kshetrakovai Murugan Pillai Tamil, he has mentioned this incident as Devar Sirai Meetta Perumal Madurai Sangap Palagai Vaal Karainja Anbana Nakkeerar Sirai Meettu Avar Sol Kavimalai Konda Perumal. He not only rescued the Devas, but he also rescued this great devotee Nakkeerar, whose heart was melting with devotion, and he accepted his poetry, which is Tirumurugatruppadai, as a garland. The same idea is also mentioned by another poet who interestingly has the same name. He's called Chidambara Munivar. He is the one who renovated the temple, the Murugan temple at Tirupporur, and also composed many poems in his praise. The collection is called Tirupporur Sannidhi Murai. People say that he has created a Karkovil and a Sorkovil for Murugan, a physical temple made of stones and a temple made of words. So in the Talat song, the lullaby for Murugan, he says, Arunagirinathan Aruntamil Nool Kiran Karunai Pera Odum Kavimalai Tolano. Is this the child who wears the works of Arunagirinatha and Nakkeerar on his shoulders as a garland? So all these tell us how much reverence everyone has had for Nakkeerar. After Tirumurugatruppadai, in most books you would find a set of Venbas, small verses, 4-line verses, which are again in praise of Murugan. Many people consider them to be part of Tirumurugatruppadai, but many scholars feel that given the style of Tamil used, this is a later addition. But these are also in praise of Murugan and evocative. They are very sweet. So people have a habit of chanting these at the end of Tirumurugatruppadai. One of them is very famous. உன்னை ஒழிய ஒருவரையும் நம்புகிலேன் பின்னை ஒருவரை யான் பின் செல்லேன் பன்னிருக்கை கோலப்பா வானோர் கொடியவினை தீர்த்தருளும் வேலப்பா செந்தி வாழ்வே. I trust only in you, O Lord of Tiruchendur. So as we can see, this style of Tamil is much simpler. It is not the same kind of Tamil used in the main Tirumurugatruppadai. So with this, we come to the end of this introduction to Tirumurugatruppadai. I am very grateful to Sri Shankara Hall for giving me this opportunity, and I pray to Murugan to bless all of us with Ihapara Saubhagyam.